In today's video I would like to explain to you the una corda pedal in grand pianos, and I'm specifically talking about grand pianos because this pedal works differently, or this mechanism works differently in upright pianos. So what I say afterwards only applies to the una corda pedal in grand pianos. In most modern grand pianos the una corda pedal is the left pedal, and what it does is it shifts the action a little bit to one side. So the action, that means the keys and the hammers are moved a little bit to one side as you press the pedal, and as you release the pedal the action goes back into its normal original position. What does that mean? Inside the piano you have different amount of strings. You have, for example, usually 3 strings in the treble section of your piano, and in the upper bass section of your piano you have 2 strings. Now if you move the action a little bit to one side, one of the consequences is that if you do that enough, you will hit less strings. So in the treble section with 3 strings, the hammer will only hit 2 strings, and in the upper bass section where we have usually 2 strings, the hammer will hit 1 string. 1 string in Italian means una corda, and hence the name of this pedal. It shifts the action in a way that the hammer only touches 1 or 2 strings respectively. What is the consequence of this? Well, the first consequence is that by directly hitting 2 strings instead of 3, you get a different sound. You get the sound of only 2 strings. And the third string that is not struck directly, that will resonate. So it will be active in a way as well, but it will not be directly struck. It will just resonate with the 2 others. This creates a different sound, a more intimate, a more smooth, and a more personal sound from within. This is at least the way I characterize it. Another second effect is that by moving the hammers a little bit, a different part of the hammer will touch the string. The part of the hammer that usually touches the string most of the time when you practice every day, this part of the felt of the hammer gets condensed because it always hits the metal strings. The felt will with time get compressed. The felt will be a little bit harder there, and the resulting tone is more bright and a little bit harder as well. Now if you move the hammer a little bit, another part of the hammer will hit the string, and this felt there in this different part will be more fresh. It will be less compressed, it will be a bit more loose, and this will create a more a softer sound. It will create a softer and less hard sound. So you actually have 2 effects. You have the effect of hitting less strings, and you have the effect of another part of the hammer with a less compressed felt touching the string. And both of these factors contribute to the different quality of sound. I would like to show you, using a short excerpt from Beethoven's Sonata number 31, opus 110, how much of a change the use of the una corda pedal can achieve. I will play for you the beginning of the 3rd movement. This is a passage that is very much from within, a very much introvert passage with feelings that come from within, which is very suitable for using una corda. In fact, Beethoven himself wrote una corda there, so he wants us to use the una corda pedal there, which is what I'm going to do. But first I play it normally, without the una corda pedal, with a brighter sound, and then secondly I will play it as intended by Beethoven, and I'm sure you can identify the differences in sound. Now the interesting thing is that this mechanism can be adjusted. Your piano technician can adjust this mechanism. He can adjust how much the action gets moved as you press the pedal. If you move it only very slightly, then you only get the effect that another part of the felt of the hammer hits the strings, but probably the hammer still hits 3 or 2 strings respectively. Whereas if you move it very much, then you have more effect, both effects come into play, and the hammer will only hit 2 strings. I think it is really worth experimenting with how much shift you want in your una corda pedal, and you can talk to your piano technician the next time you see this person and ask them about it, if they can adjust it or if they can make it shift a little bit more or a little bit less, so that you can hear what differences in sound you can achieve. This is different in every piano, and I encourage you to try and find out how it works in your piano. This is actually really very interesting. Now, there's one thing to be careful about. If you shift the action too much, then not only 2 strings instead of 3 will be touched, but maybe already one of the string of the neighboring tone of the neighboring key will be touched. So of course this you have to avoid. This will be too much of a shift, and sometimes this is not very easy to hear, so it requires a trained ear by a trained musician or by a trained piano technician who can tell you when it's too much of a shift. I will demonstrate this for you, that it's not so easy to hear on this piano. Now on this piano I can demonstrate what it means if the shifting mechanism of the una corda pedal is not adjusted correctly. I will play for you 3 notes. 2 of them sound well, and in one of them the neighboring strings, or one of the neighboring strings, will be touched as well. Now, as I mentioned before, this is quite difficult to hear, and it requires a trained ear to hear it. So let's see if you can figure it out. I play 3 notes, 2 of them work well and 1 of them doesn't. Try to figure out which one it is. I do it again. Did you find out? It was the middle one. In the middle one, the hammer also hits the neighboring string, so the mechanism shifts too much. I can demonstrate this very well like this. If I mutely press one of the keys so that the dampers are lifted and that the strings can resonate, and I hit the neighboring key and then release it again, then there should be no sound, like this. Now there's no sound anymore. That's correct, because the hammer only hits these strings and none of the strings where the damper is released. Now if I do this, there where the hammer is also hitting one of the other strings, it sounds like this. Well, what you hear now, resonating, this is the neighboring string that was also hit by the hammer. I show you again. If I do it here, there's no sound afterwards. If I do it here, there is sound. And if you have very sensitive ears, you can also hear it without this little trick, if I just play like this. You can hear that this note here is a little bit unclean. You can hear that there's a little bit of the neighboring note in there as well, but that requires a trained ear. So next time my piano technician comes, I will ask him to adjust this, that we also have a clean note here. Now, when should you use the una corda pedal? Of course, the safe bet is to depress the una corda pedal every time the composer indicated it. Many composers in their work indicate where you should use the una corda pedal. It is usually in moments where you want a very intimate sound, a sound from within, a very soft sound. In my opinion, the use of the una corda pedal is of course not limited to these passages. It can also be used additionally in other passages where you see fit. But using the una corda pedal is not a helper for playing piano or pianissimo. So an indication of piano or pianissimo doesn't per se allow you to use the una corda pedal. It is not an excuse for a bad piano technique, and you shouldn't use it just to play piano or pianissimo. There are other techniques that have to do with how you carry the weight of your arm, how you carry the weight of your wrist, so that your fingers can stroke the keys very softly and very lightly, and this will produce the pianissimo effect. And I encourage you to learn more about these techniques instead of just always depressing the una corda pedal. I think this is a very bad habit if one just depresses the una corda pedal in order to achieve pianissimo. I would recommend depressing the una corda pedal in places where you want to create a special effect, a little surprise, something that touches people, in order to highlight music that comes really from within in this special passage. Now, as in most analogous things, the una corda pedal is not just an on-off switch. You have to depress the pedal a certain way. As I said, this can be more or less. And this is a continuous movement. As you can see here in this little demonstration, this is a continuous movement. And I encourage you to try and find out in every passage where you use this pedal, if you want to use it full or nothing, if you want to gradually depress the pedal and gradually release it, if you only want to depress it halfway and then release again. So there are many different traits possible there in how you use the una corda pedal. And this is a very nice example for something where the composer just indicates una corda, but it leaves you a lot of freedom in how you do it. And this is actually the artistic freedom, and this is where your artistic qualities come into play, where your qualities about interpretation come into play. I really encourage you to try out, to play with it, to listen carefully to the changes that are achieved, and to find out how different this can be on every instrument. Have fun!